All right, everyone. As always, this is Tim, New York Giants Straight Talk, online Big Blue. You know me from so many different things. And, every time we like to do something different. And sometimes it's talking to the enemy. We have Bram Weinstein from, you know what it is? You are the play-by-play voice of the Washington Commanders. I always want to do my John Facenda every time I speak to someone on radio. People also probably remember you from ESPN. I remember you over in your Sports Center days. So it is a pleasure to have you on. Of course, you're also on the Bleav network as well. You have your podcast. You also have your own media venture, which I want to talk about at the end a little bit. But really want to get into. First of all, I want to thank you for coming on, and
my pleasure.
I really want to get into the rivalry from the Redskins. I'm sorry, Commanders. I'm old. Like I said, I've been watching the Giants since '76. I know you're a huge Washington fan. I've heard the stories of you going back to RFK. I went to RFK once, and that was in 1983, and I think we all know what that season was. But you've had a renaissance. The Commanders really have had a renaissance. It's been a change in ownership. It's been a change and I think in just the mental fortitude of the team, and a change in quarterback. And of course, you were lucky enough. I'm going to use that word lucky to get what I thought was the best quarterback in the draft, going on 2 years now, and that's Jaden Daniels.
I agree with you.
I just wanted to get your perspective of how that pick really, in some ways, because I thought he overperformed as a rookie, but really in some ways just kind of just steered the franchise in a totally different direction.
Yeah, everything had already changed. The ownership had changed. The front office had changed. The coaching staff had changed. We had 30 new players last year too. So more than half the team had changed too. So I think that was a lot of the surprise of a year ago was we thought we'd be better. You're always optimistic. We have this young, very talented quarterback. We like the new culture, everything they're saying. But none of that typically adds up to the level of success that they had in year one. And a lot of it had to do, I think, with the true culture change that occurred. I want to credit Dan Quinn and Adam Peters with doing that. But number 5 is a very, very special player. They were, for the first time, we've been waiting. He's the best. He is the best young quarterback we've had in my adult lifetime wear this uniform. I think he had, this may be biased, but I think it's arguable. I think he had the best rookie season any quarterback's ever had. Metrically, from completion percentage to 4-13 to 12-5 to doing things in the franchise that have never happened before. A Hail Mary, 2 road playoff wins in the same postseason. That's never happened before. So they had the best season they've had since 1991. And a lot of it had to do with him being so far ahead of the curve. I think we were a little lucky that we happened to be in a season where we needed a quarterback, had the number 2 overall pick, and probably couldn't have really gone wrong with any of the top 3. And potentially Michael Penix feels like a historic class that has come in here. That said, I think we got the best of the bunch. He truly feels like a unicorn, and his work ethic matches his talent level. And his stock rose from Arizona State to LSU to superstardom to first season NFL. And knowing what he's about and how important football is to him and what his talent ceiling is, we're not sure how far he's going to go and what he's going to become. So I think you have a problem in the division for the next however many years we can keep him under contract here, because
I'm hoping only 5.
He is an outstanding young man, and obviously a way ahead of the curve player.
You brought up something interesting. I did want to get into it as well. The play-by-play call against the Berrigs game, that Hail Mary, that I've listened to it a couple times, and it was just such a visceral experience that you literally thought the game. I mean, when I was watching the game, but you literally thought the game was over. And to have something like that happen, during that entire play, what really went through your mind?
So this is a 90-plus-year-old franchise. We've never had a Hail Mary before.
I know. That's where I was going. That's exactly where I was going with that.
First time. You got to remember, too, that leading into the game, we weren't sure he was going to play because he had injured his ribs the week before on the first series. I think he only played a couple of plays, went out, didn't finish, didn't practice most of the week, had a rib injury. So the idea that he could even throw it that far was really in question. And it was a miracle. I mean, it was nothing short of it. Now, they'll tell you, and if you watch it, the most amazing part of it is, and I think really a lot, like, again, it's not just Jaden Daniels as to why they had the season they had. They were an extremely organized, prepared, great chemistry, but preparation was a big part of the success. And just go look at that play is just like the most prime example of it. Like, everybody who's supposed to be standing at the goal line is standing at the goal line. Noah Brown is 2 yards behind the play in the end zone purposefully, not because he just happens to be there, but they've practiced this play. He was exactly where he needed to be. And yeah, they needed luck. They needed the ball to bounce up in the air. It's the easiest Hail Mary catch you'll ever see in your life. It's like an infant was handed to him because he's standing where he's supposed to be waiting for it. And it was a visceral experience. And, I don't think I'm going to win any awards for that call because we're just kind of screaming, because it was so incredible what happened. That said, every time I saw a video from the fans who were watching it on TV or were at the stadium or whatever they reacted the same way I did. And I grew up a fan of the team. And I want to be a great broadcaster, but in a moment, I think the fandom just came out, and it was visceral. It was really kind of hard to describe. I remember going down to the locker room. They have the cooling off period before you're allowed to go into the locker room and see the players. And we got down there and they hadn't opened the doors yet. And all the reporters were waiting. And someone said to me, like, what was the call? And I honestly turned to him and I go, I don't remember. Like, I don't even remember what I said. I didn't, until later when it was airing again on Twitter or something. I don't remember. It was an out of body experience. It was really cool.
As Giant fans, we hope to have that someday. We have after 11 years in the desert a little bit. We hope we're going to go that way a little bit. But the last year when the Commanders were rebuilding this team, their free agency was so important. Some people said you went out and got a little bit too much older talent. I always thought you were bringing in guys like Wagner and everyone else that were going to be able to teach a young team how to grow. Your off season, I mean, inside the division, I would have to say you probably had one of the best off seasons, finding not only protection for Jaden Daniels, but finding him, some weapons to go along with Terry McLaurin. But you really had something. I think you have something special going on to this offseason. I think you had some undercredited signings. As I was taking a look at some of the areas that you're going into 2025. Where do you see the most improvement that you feel with this offseason that the Commanders are going to have?
I think they needed a lot. The more divorced you get away from the season, I think they maximize the roster that they had. There were three things I think that they needed. I think they got two of them, even though they could use a little bit more. The offensive line. I believe the Laramie Tunsil trade is the biggest move they've made of the offseason. It has a trickle-down effect on the entire offensive line. Brandon Coleman was a third-round pick starting left tackle who's now going to be a starting left guard and probably is where he belongs. Next to Tunsil, with Tyler Biotish, when they get Sam Cosmi back, he injured his ACL in the playoffs, so the chances of him starting the season healthy are slim. But hopefully some point, October, November, he's back starting for them. They just drafted a first-round pick at a tackle. So they're going to go from what I think was a humongous question mark. I think the offensive line performed admirably, but from a talent perspective, they've been upgraded immensely. So hopefully when this all comes together mid-season, you're looking at a strength and not potentially a weakness. That ought to help Jaden. They needed to get more explosive playmakers. I don't even care which position groups, like receiver, tight end, running back, didn't matter. They needed to. They go and get Deebo Samuel. They're hoping that he's going to be the player that you saw a couple of years ago, the Pro Bowl caliber player. Add him to McLaurin. I still think they could use a little bit more in playmaking ability, but they're going to go with what they have at running back and tight end. We'll see what happens, I think, next year. Those are spots to watch to see how they upgrade there. And on the other side of the ball, there were two things that really had to happen. They had to fix their rush defense. That was the biggest weakness of their defense a year ago. They went out of their way to sign a lot of veteran defensive linemen. So I buy that they're going to be better against the run this year. But what they do not have is a premier or even situational professional edge rusher. So that's a missing void. You guys have too many of them. We can
trade one for you for a quarterback.
Well,
Brian Burns and a seventh rounder, and we'll take that guy off your hands.
Yeah, I bet you will. You guys have an interesting logjam at that position. Moving forward, we do not have Thibodeau Abdul Carter, Brian Bird. We don't have one of them. So will that come back to haunt this team in terms of turnovers, stops, third down? Like we could use Hassan Reddick for that matter. Somebody who's a 7 to 12 sack professional third down rusher. We do not at this juncture have this. So they couldn't do everything. They didn't get all the explosiveness they wanted, but they did a lot on the offensive side of the ball with the Tunsil trade and the acquisition of Deebo Samuel. And on the other side of the ball, they couldn't do everything, but they did a lot. I think they're going to be a lot better against the run. If you look across the board at what they have on the defensive line, they're going to be a lot better against the run. The question is, will they get consistent pressure? And I think that's an open question because they really don't have a dominant pass rusher on their unit.
I think an underrated signing also is the Jonathan Jones signing.
Coming
over from the Patriots. I mean, you've revamped your secondary. You're going to, I mean, like I said, you're putting the pieces together. And one of the biggest pieces, before I get to the biggest piece, Bobby Johnson, your offensive line coach.
Yeah.
He of course was a Giant. He was, how to say it nicely, probably the bane of existence for a lot of Giant fans because they felt that his approach to the offensive line was not conducive to the talent they had. He goes over to the Commanders. The Commanders, to your point, I think overachieved at times on that offensive line. Could you maybe just give us a little bit of idea of what worked for Bobby Johnson in Washington that may have not have worked for him in New York?
I couldn't speak to what happened in New York because I don't really know. But I will tell you here, two things were working in their favor. One, I think the expectations were a little bit lower. Their starting left tackle is a third-round pick. He's the 11th tackle taken off the board. Their starting left guard was a backup in Kansas City. Their center was a starting center in Dallas. Their right guard is their best offensive lineman, at least coming into this year. And their right tackle was someone that people wanted to run out of town a year ago because he gave up too many sacks, and he's starting over. So I think the expectations of the group were lower. And then when they exceeded those expectations, it makes everybody look really good. I think it helps that they have an elusive player at quarterback who makes everybody look good. And I think it helps that Cliff Kingsbury's the real deal. I think this is another person who perception doesn't meet reality with the work ethic. We learned this about him in real time. We didn't know much about him either. And he's turned out to be as much of a grinder of a coach of anybody that we've had come in here in a long time. He's the one at 5 a.m. in the building with Jaden Daniels. So while I can't speak to what happened in New York with Bobby Johnson, I do think that they maximized the group that they had. Because if you look at the group that they had a year ago, we thought this was going to be a massive weakness of this team, and it did not work out that way. 6 of the first 8 games that they played, they had team rush total over 200 yards. Like, I don't think anybody, like, we don't have Saquon Barkley in our backfield. Like, we don't have an offensive line. Like, we don't have the Eagles offensive line, so I think like they maximize this. And because of the success, they've given Bobby Johnson a much more talented group to work with this time around. And so I think this is where I think scrutiny will come in. You have a group with a all-pro left tackle now. Your pick from a year ago turned out to be a starter, is going to be your starting left guard now. You just used a first-round pick on a right tackle. This is where I think he gets judged in how the unit performs as opposed to a year ago.
Terry McLaurin right now missed OTAs, trying to get a new contract. There's speculation in the papers and some of the media that he's looking for $30 million a year, or maybe that's his jump off point. Definitely one of the cogs of this team. Is there any speculation that he may miss any extended time during training camp, or do you think they're going to get something wrapped up?
I think they'll get something done. I mean, this isn't acrimonious. I mean, the reality is they want him and he doesn't want to go anywhere. So, I think it's a different situation when it's someone who's hoping to get somewhere else. I really don't believe that that's what McLaurin wants. He just wants to be paid in the upper echelon of, wide receivers right now. I don't know what he's asking for. So, I mean, and the other tricky part is, and I think from the Commander's perspective in talking to him, is he is almost 30. So this is different than Jamar Chase or CeeDee Lamb or Justin Jefferson, who are all in their mid-20s and got these deals and also have exponentially higher stat lines than Terry does. So if he's looking for a contract like they got, I think there's going to be some discussions about that. If he's looking for something in the tier below them, like say what DK Metcalf just got from Pittsburgh, I think there's a lot of like room to probably discuss that. And I really, they're going to build a statue of this guy if they win a Super Bowl around here. He is by far, outside of Jaden, not close, the most popular player here. He is in line, if he plays another 3 to 5 years, to break almost every record that any receiver's ever had here. He just broke the record for most receiving touchdowns in a single season. Go look at his stats and then think about all the quarterbacks who have played here through the course of his career, and then match up those stats to anybody else who's, played to that many years in the NFL. And it stands up against anybody. And he had Carson Wentz, Taylor Heineke, Sam Howell, the list goes on and on. Case Keenum, Dwayne Haskins, like all of these different quarterbacks, many of which are either not playing or backups in the NFL now. He finally has a star quarterback, and he posted the best numbers of his career. Shocker. He's a model of consistency. And I just think he's almost 30 and wants to get paid. I don't blame him. The problem is I just don't know what he's asking for. And that's where it's hard to know what's going to happen. But nobody around here is worried about him like not being there. So I think something will get done.
A lot of fans outside of probably DC, I know, especially in Philadelphia area and New York, say that the Commanders they benefited from a weak schedule last year, that this year is going to be something different because they are going to play some more upper echelon opponents. The Giants are facing the same thing. So will the Cowboys, same with the Eagles. When you hear that from other fan bases that you guys got lucky. And I always say you can only beat the teams that are on your schedule. But when you hear that, what is the feeling? What feeling do you get? Do you feel like that's a disrespect for what the Commanders did last year? Or is this just something more to prove going into 2025?
I mean, they beat Atlanta late season. They were both in the playoff hunt. They're the only team to beat Philadelphia since October. They won 2 road playoff games, one in Tampa Bay and one against the 1 seed who was off a bye. Like, I don't know. Like, you tell me, was it easy? Because it doesn't seem like it was to me, at least down the stretch. And they won the biggest games that they played in up until they got to the NFC Championship game. So, yes, I think their schedule's harder. I agree. Like the Eagles is too. They're playing the same teams.
Yep.
And the Commanders are also in a different spot here. They're going to be profiled differently. Like they have more standalone games than anybody else in the NFL. They got 6 night games. They got a Christmas Day game. They're going to Madrid. They're playing week 2 Thursday night on the road Green Bay. Like they got a very difficult schedule to navigate. But you know what? Like we invite it. We want it. I mean, like every year Buffalo's got a hard schedule. Every year Baltimore's got a hard schedule. Every year Kansas City's got a hard schedule. They somehow end up with double-digit wins every year. They end up in the playoffs. Eagles are doing the same thing now. So bring it on. Like if you want to be a team that's going to sustain success, you're going to have a bullseye on you. And they've earned it. I'm a little surprised they got to the number they got to a year ago, but they've earned it.
The Giants, of course, selected Jackson Dart in the first round this year. He's got a little bit different situation than Jaden Daniels had coming in. He's got Russell Wilson. He's got Jameis Winston. But the pressure is still going to be on this kid to do something this season because Giant fans are so impatient right now. You've seen the way that Jaden Daniels came in and turned around the franchise. Just taking an outside look at Jackson Dart, there's been some questions about his ability. There's some questions the fact that he may be a Lane Kiffin product who has this tendency of cutting the field half and giving the gentleman one option and no ability to audible. So you always go back to his greatest success in the NFL for Kiffin has been the likes of Matt Barkley. When you're looking from the outside perspective at Jackson Dart, as the enemy, we'll say, what do you see? What do you see as a player, and what do you think that maybe his ceiling could potentially be?
Great arm, a lot of experience. Those are 2 really, really good things. He's got the NFL body prototype arm. I didn't study him like I studied the quarterbacks a year ago because I knew we weren't taking one. So like it's a very different year in looking at the draft because the Commanders were never taking someone like this. I think it's an interesting situation. Brian Daboll's success with quarterbacks has been a very mobile quarterback. Josh Allen into coming to New York, Daniel Jones, very mobile quarterback. He is not. So I think that's going to be very interesting to see the mesh of that. I like Daboll a lot. I think he's been handed an interesting, he's had an interesting hand for sure that he's had to try to navigate. When is he going to play? Is he going to supplant Russ sooner rather than later? Like all of that is, and if they have a bad record, does this group survive? And so like there's a lot kind of happening here that's kind of on the periphery of it, but just overall, just as not knowing a ton about him, I know what his experience level is. I know what his arm strength is. This is going to be a traditional pocket quarterback. He's not going to be an extremely mobile player. So what does their offense look like with him? And do they have the secondary target outside of Neighbors that is going to warrant people to get away from bracketing Neighbors, which they're going to have to do anyway. So that's how I just kind of see it, at least initially. I think Neighbors has the possibility of being Jamar Chase, which is a nightmare. Like he could be the most dangerous receiver in the NFL outside of Chase. Like that's my viewpoint of him. Do they have enough around him in terms of explosive playmakers to allow him the space to really, match his capability? I don't know. And without any kind of, there doesn't seem to be much of a threat, at least initially, of Dart leaving the pocket very much or using his legs to hurt you. So let's see what their offense looks like. I think I'm most interested in that. Let's see what their offense looks like, because Daboll's worked with mobile quarterbacks through the course of his rise, and this is not going to be one. So I'm very interested to see how that kind of goes.
You've been calling Commanders games for a while now, so you've seen quite a bit. What is your favorite moment in reference to the rivalry, the Giants and the Commanders? What is your when you sit there and think of all the games you've called and everything you have seen, what is your favorite moment that stands out to you?
Oh man, I mean, in recent years, it's been tough because really neither one of them have been particularly good for any stretch of time. But there was the one, a couple years ago where you guys got, we had two games here. One where you guys kind of got robbed on a field goal that we were allowed to try a second time and beat you at the buzzer. And then there was the other one a couple years ago, a night game that, I don't know, the referees allowed Curtis Samuel to get mugged in the end zone at the end of a game, called some crazy procedural call on Terry McLaurin after he asked the referee if he was lined up properly. That was nuts. So, lately they've just had weird games, like the one last year where Graham Gano got hurt on the kickoff and you guys couldn't kick extra points. That was weird. That started the we used to get these weird stats last year. We knew it was a special year. We kept getting weird stats, one kicking 7 field goals, gave up 3 touchdowns, didn't score one, won the game anyway. First time since World War II that happened. Really weird stats. I'd like to see Dart work out, because I'd like to see this rivalry kind of pick back up and have both these teams good at the same time. It feels like that hasn't really been the case since the 80s, where they've both been good at the same time. Listen, I got to cut this short because I have to run.
No, yeah. I understand. And like I said, and I appreciate the time. Also, you can catch Bram on the Bleav Network with his podcast. You also have another place that your podcast is found, one of your media.
Yeah. My company is Ampire Media, AMPIRE. You can catch all of our stuff on YouTube there or wherever you get your podcasts, my show, and a number of others that focus mainly on Washington, D.C. sports and the Commanders.
Well, I appreciate you spending as much time as you could with us. And like I said, hopefully we'll do a little bit better against you this year.
All right. See ya.
All right. Thanks, Bram.